Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse study of the entire Bible. And I might add a plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. Currently, we are in Second Chronicles chapter 17. And Jehoshaphat, now, if you have been following us, we when we went through Kings, we were kind of right at the uh, Ahab saga on the Israel side, and of course Ahab. You have had several kings that have set the standard of wickedness. Jeroboam was one, and then Ahab was another. Manasseh sealed the doom. What is interesting about this story, at the time, you remember, we see that Jehoshaphat, who was the king of Judah, uh, he allied with Ahab, wicked Ahab. So this is where we're going to read this story, is because Jehoshaphat was a good king, but it's like, dude, the poor choice of who he allied with. So, all right, let's get into it. All right, chapter 17, verse 1. His son Jehoshaphat became king in his place, and he strengthened himself against Israel. He stationed troops in every fortified city of Judah and set garrisons in the land of Judah and in the cities of Ephraim that his father Asa had captured. So you remember Asa was a good king, but his heart turned towards the end of his life. And now we see Jehoshaphat is going to be a good king. And his thing would be just who he allies with. But what is interesting is, remember Israel, when we go back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, should have been one nation. Of course, Solomon's son Rehoboam split the kingdom. So now we have two kingdoms, uh, under really one God. Okay, the split was by God's design, in that you see that because of Solomon's sin, God said he would tear the kingdom. And this would go on all the way into the Babylonian exile. Now we see that Jehoshaphat, the good kings, whenever there was a good king, you see just what he's doing here, fortifying Judah itself. Judah was smaller in population, smaller in landmass, but stronger spiritually. And as a result, actually became stronger kind of as a nation. Verse 3. Now the Lord was with Jehoshaphat because he walked in the former ways of his father David. He did not seek the Baals, but sought the God of his father and walked by his commandments, not according to the practices of Israel. Spiritually speaking, Israel was a contrast for the most part. And Judah had, at least for the most part, good kings. Verse 5, so the Lord established a kingdom in his hand. Then all of Judah brought him tribute, and he had riches and honor in abundance. His mind rejoiced in the Lord's way, and he again removed the high places and asked repose from Judah. Now, again, what is amazing is that the fact that they were present. Think about this. In every generation, someone started erecting these pagan symbols, pagan places of worship. Verse 7, the third year of his reign, Jehoshaphat sent his officials to Ben-Hail, Obadiah, Zechariah, Nathaniel and Micah to teach in the cities of Judah. Now, right here, this is, I'm going to say, the key to Jehoshaphat's success. Teaching the people. And notice, he sent these people to teach them. Verse 8, the Levites with them were Shemaiah, Nathaniel, Zebediah, Asaiah, Shemarath, I know that butchering, Jehonadab, Adonijah, Tobijah, and Adoniah, the priests, Elamiah and Jehoram were with these Levites. Again, I know I'm butchering the pronunciation of these names. They taught throughout Judah, having the book of the Lord's instructions with them. They went throughout the towns of Judah and taught the people. Now, again, this right here, if any pastor is listening, that's the key in God's eyes. Okay, not just having a big church. The largest church in America, in God's eyes, is not great, because the question is, what are they being taught? Think about that. What are they being taught? Verse 10, the terror of the Lord was on all the kingdoms of the land and surrounding Judah, so they didn't fight against Jehoshaphat. Some of the Philistines also brought gifts and silvers as tribute to Jehoshaphat, and the Arabs brought him flock, 7,700 rams, 7,700 male goats. Jehoshaphat grew stronger and stronger. He built fortresses and stored cities in Judah, and he carried out great works in the towns of Judah. He had fighting men, brave warriors in Jerusalem. These are their numbers to the ancestral families. For Judah, the commanders of 1,000. So Abner, the commander of 300,000 brave warriors with him. Next to him, Jehonadan, the commander of 280,000 with him. Next to him was Amasiah, son of Zerchitri, the volunteer of the Lord, and 200,000 brave soldiers with him. From Benjamin, Eliab, the brave soldiers, 200,000 with him, armed, bowed shields. Next to him, Jehoshaphat, and 180,000 with him equipped for war. These were the ones who served the king, besides those he stationed in fortified cities throughout Judah. So, if you remember in Kings, we only saw that Jehoshaphat visited Ahab. Now we're getting Jehoshaphat's side or point of view. Chapter 18, verse 1. Now Jehoshaphat had riches and honor in abundance, and he made an alliance with Ahab through marriage. Then after some years, he went down to visit Ahab in Samaria. Ahab sacrificed many sheep and cattle for him and for the people who were with him. Then he persuaded him to march up to Ramoth Gilead. For Israel's king Ahab asked Judah's king Jehoshaphat, will you go up to Ramoth Gilead? He replied to him, I am as you are. My people as your people. We will be with you in battle. But Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, first, please ask what the Lord's will is. Now, many problems with this. So on the one hand, it's right? The problem is that, if we will see, Jehoshaphat is not going to listen to him. In other words, why did you ask if you didn't listen? But the other problem is allying with a wicked person. In other words, you're asking the wrong thing. Okay? Verse 5, to the king of Israel gathered the prophets, 400 men, and asked them, should we go up to Ramoth Gilead for war, or should we refrain? Should I refrain? They replied, march up, and God will hand it over to the king. Now, these were false prophets. Okay? But Jehoshaphat asked, is there a prophet of Yahweh here anymore? Let us ask him. So shouldn't that have been a sign to Jehoshaphat? In other words, what am I involved in here, and who am I involved with? Verse 7, the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, there is Still one man who could ask Yahweh, but I hate him because he never prophesies good about me, but only disaster. He is Micaiah, son of Elam. Uh, Elam. The king shouldn't say that, Jehoshaphat replied. Really? That's all you have to say? So this is already not going good for Jehoshaphat. So the king of Israel called an officer and said, hurry and get Micaiah, son of Imli. Now, the king of Israel and the king of Jehoshaphat, king of Jehoshaphat of Judah, now, the king of Israel and King Jehoshaphat of Judah, clothed in royal attire, were each sitting on his own throne, and they were sitting at the threshing floor at the entrance of the Samaritan gates. Now, you remember the gates of the city were sometimes where the men met, chewed the fat, also took care of city business. He said, and all the prophets were prophesying in front of them, and Zedekiah, son of Cheniah, made iron horns and said, this is what the Lord says, you will gore the Arameans with these until they are finished off. And all the prophets were prophesying the same thing. March up to Ramoth Gilead and succeed, for the Lord were handed over to the king. And the messengers who went to Micaiah instructed him, look, the words of the prophets are unanimous and favorably for the king. So let your words be like theirs and speak favorably. Now, in this obviously could be a lot of messages here. Okay, there could be a lot of messages here. Who you think, even today, there are a lot of. I'm so tempted to get into this, but I won't. But there are a lot of ministers who are going a particular way politically, and if you speak out against that political angle, you get ostracized. All right. Verse 13. But Micaiah said, as the Lord lives, I will say whatever my God says. So he went to the king, and the king asked him, Micaiah, should we go up to Ramoth Gilead for war, or should I refrain? Micaiah said, march up and succeed, for they will be handed over to you. Now, I kind of imagine that the way he said it, probably flippantly, yeah, whatever, go up, But the king said to him, how many times must I make you swear not to tell me anything but truth in the name of Yahweh? Now, this is kind of amazing that Ahab would kind of demand this of him. Now, all of his other prophets have been prophesying all these false things. And then when Micaiah flippantly said that, he said, no, tell me the truth with the Lord. So Micaiah said, I saw all of Israel scattered on the hills like sheep without a shepherd. And the Lord said, they have no master, let each return to his home. So the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, didn't I tell you he never prophesied good about me, but only disaster? So at this point, you have to ask yourself, why? Why does the true prophet of God, you just acknowledge the true prophet of God, why, if he doesn't prophesy any good about you, shouldn't that tell you something? All right, verse 18. Then Micaiah said, therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and the whole heavenly host was standing at his right hand and at his left hand. And the Lord said, who will entice Ahab, king of Israel, to march up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? So one was saying this and another was saying that, meaning the host of heaven. So you see this heavenly scene. Now there's a lot sometimes that we assume about the heavenly realm that Scripture never talked about. The matter is we just don't know. We get glimpse. This is a glimpse. This is a kind of a glimpse, a revelation. So you see here God is sitting on his throne and you see the heavenly host, but apparently there are also good and bad. Verse 20, then the Spirit came forward and stood before the Lord and said, I will entice him. The Lord asked him how. So he said, I will go and become a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. He said, you will entice him and also prevail. Go and do that. Now, you see, the Lord has put a lying spirit in the mouth of these prophets of yours, and they have pronounced disaster against you. Then Zedekiah, the son of Cheniah, came and hit Micaiah in the face and demanded, which way did the Spirit from the Lord leave me to speak to you? Micaiah Micaiah replied, "You will soon see it when you go and hide yourself in the inner chamber on that day." And the king of Israel ordered, "Take Micaiah and return him to Ammon, the governor of the city, and to Joash, the king's son, and say, 'This is what the king says: Put this guy in prison and feed him only bread and water until I come back safely.'" But Micaiah said, "If I ever return safely, the Lord has not spoken through me." Then he said, "Listen, all you people." But they didn't. And especially Jehoshaphat. Then the king of Israel and Judah, the king of Israel and Judah's king, Jehoshaphat, went up to Ramoth Gilead. Now stop. Again, Jehoshaphat, what are you doing there? You asked for a prophet of the Lord. They gave you a prophet of the Lord. What are you doing there? Verse 29, but the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "I will disguise myself and go into battle, but you wear the royal attire." So the king of Israel disguised himself, and they went into battle. Now, if it had not been for God's mercy, Jehoshaphat so far is becoming one of the most stupidest person you ever could see. Ahab is playing him. So why do you think Ahab is disguising himself but telling Jehoshaphat, "Hey, you put on the royal attire"? Because the people, when they see the royal attire, will focus their attention on him. And Jehoshaphat is falling for this. Now, verse 30, now the king of Aram had ordered his chariot commanders, "Do not fight with anyone small or great except for the king of Israel." How would they know the king of Israel? By what he was wearing. And when the chariot commanders saw Jehoshaphat, they shouted, "He must be the king of Israel." So they turned to attack him, but Jehoshaphat cried out, and the Lord helped him, and God drew them away from him. And when the chariot commanders saw that he was not the king of Israel, they turned back from pursuing him. But a man drew a bow without taking special aim and struck the king of Israel through his joints of his armor. So he said to his chariot, "Turn around and take me out of battle, for I am badly wounded." And the battle raged throughout that day, and the king of Israel propped himself up in his chariot, facing the Arameans until evening, and then he died at sunset. Now, I guess another greatest thing here would be how merciful God is. Okay? How merciful God is, because despite how foolish Jehoshaphat was, when he cried out to the Lord, God still helped him. So I think that in our foolishness, and I could say I have been plenty of foolish. Plenty. But God has been merciful. Chapter 19, verse 1. Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, returned to his home in Jerusalem. Then Jehu, son of Hananiah the seer, went out to confront him and said to Jehoshaphat, "Do you help the wicked and love those that hate the Lord? Because of this, the Lord's wrath is upon you. However, some good is found in you, for you have removed the Asherah pole from the land and have decided to seek God." So he does get rebuked. And God does tell him that, hey, guess what? You were foolish for helping the wicked. But thank God for his mercy, that God had mercy on him. Jehoshaphat lived in Jerusalem, and once again he went out among the people from Beersheba to the hill country of Ephraim and brought them back to Yahweh. And this is the good that is in him, despite his foolish acts and decisions to ally with the wicked king. He appointed judges in all fortified cities of the land of Judah, city by city. Then he said to the judges, "Consider what you're doing, for you're not to judge for man, but for the Lord who is with you in the matter of judgment. And now may the terror of the Lord be upon you. Watch what you do, for there is no injustice or impartiality or taking bribes with the Lord our God." Jehoshaphat also appointed in Jerusalem some of the Levites, the priests, and some of the heads of the Israel families for deciding the Lord's will and for settling disputes of the residents of Jerusalem. He commanded them, saying, "In the fear of the Lord, with the integrity and with the whole heart, you ought to do the following. For every dispute that comes to you from your brother who dwells in your cities, whether It regards difference of blood guilt, law, commandments, statutes, judgments. You are to warn them so that they will not incur guilt before the Lord, and wrath will not come upon you or your brothers. Do this, and you will not incur guilt. This says, note that Amariah, the chief priest, is over you in all the matters related to the Lord, and Ziba, the son of Ishmael, and the ruler of the the ruler of the house of Judah, and all the matters related to the king, and the Levites are officers in your presence. Be strong. May the Lord be with you. Be with those who do what is good. All right. Again, this is one of the to me what shows about this here is that one of the greatest testimonies of any leader, a true, you can say Christian or pastor. Notice he says, teach the people. Teach the people. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. As always, if you have a thought to comment, add it to the comment section. All comments are welcome. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next study.